You don't forget the day your parents leave you behind like trash at a gas station, especially when it was never meant to be a mistake. I was 16. It was the middle of July, sweltering hot, the kind of day where the air feels thick and unforgiving. We'd just visited my sister Mia at college, 4 hours from home, and I was half asleep in the backseat of my dad's beat-up Camry when he pulled into some nowhere town gas station off I-95. "Ben, go get me a coffee," he grunted. That was my dad, Roger, barking orders like he was running a boot camp. My mom, Sharon, didn't even look back. I grabbed the crumpled $5 bill he tossed my way and headed inside. The coffee machine was busted, so I had to wait while the weary-looking cashier brewed a fresh pot. It took maybe 10 minutes. When I came out, the car was gone. At first, I thought they'd just pulled around the corner. I walked the lot twice searching. Then I saw it, our Camry fading into the distance on the highway ramp. I stood there on the baking asphalt, holding a steaming cup of gas station coffee, watching my parents drive away. My phone buzzed, a text from my mom. "Let's see how long it takes you to get home. Consider this a lesson in problem solving." I called them, straight to voicemail. A second text came through 20 minutes later. "Don't bother calling. Your father says you need to figure it out yourself. See you when you make it home." This wasn't new. Sharon and Roger believed in tough love, though there wasn't much love in it. I'd been locked outside in winter for bringing home a C+, forced to mow the lawn at 3 a.m. because I forgot the day before. Every mistake I made turned into some twisted parenting stunt. But this was different. Something inside me snapped, or maybe it finally just broke. I stood there in the heat, coffee cooling in my hand, and realized I was done. Done playing the obedient son. Done believing they were teaching me anything but cruelty. My backpack, my clothes, my phone charger was in the trunk, but I had my wallet. About $140 saved from my summer job at the community pool, my iPod, my ID, and just enough resentment to fuel a revolution. I walked back into the gas station and asked the cashier where the nearest bus station was. "Couple miles down that road," he said, jerking his thumb toward the horizon. "You okay, kid?" "Yeah," I said. "Just need to make a call first." I called Aunt Valerie, my mom's sister, the one they hadn't spoken to in years because she spoiled me once by buying me a phone after they took mine away. She picked up on the second ring. "They left you where?" Aunt Valerie didn't hesitate. She booked me a ride with a local car service to the bus station and emailed me a ticket. "Get here, Ben," she said. "We'll figure the rest out." The texts kept coming. "Don't you dare call Valerie. Your father is very disappointed. This attitude of yours needs to stop." I turned off my phone, got on that bus, watched the trees blur past for 6 hours. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I just sat there, listening to the hum of the road and thinking, they really left me. By the time they came home to an empty house that night, I was already halfway to a new life. I heard later that they filed a missing persons report, expected me to be waiting at the gas station, still holding their coffee. But I never went back. Not then. Not ever. And that was the last day I called Roger and Sharon my parents. A lot can happen in 20 years, but some wounds don't scab over. They calcify, harden into something sharp that never stops cutting. The bus ride to Aunt Valerie's changed everything. I arrived in Charleston sometime past midnight. She met me at the terminal, eyes puffy like she'd been crying the whole 6 hours. She wrapped me in the kind of hug I hadn't felt in years. No lectures, no life lessons, just warmth. That first night I slept in her guest room, well, more like passed out. I remember staring at the ceiling fan, the room so still it made me feel like I'd just stepped into a different dimension. The contrast was jarring. No banging doors, no shouting about how I'd never amount to anything, just peace. Valerie didn't pepper me with questions. She let me talk when I was ready. Slowly, over the next few days, I told her everything. The C+ punishment, the locked doors in winter, the lessons that felt more like abuse. When I told her what happened at the gas station, she didn't say, "I'm sure they meant well," or "did their best." She just looked at me and said, "That wasn't parenting, Ben. That was cruelty." She didn't just give me a bed, she gave me a shot at a new life. Valerie was a paralegal with a decent apartment and a heart 10 times bigger than her paycheck. She took me in, helped me file for emancipation, and enrolled me in GED classes at the local adult learning center. I worked evenings washing dishes at a diner 3 blocks from her place. It wasn't glamorous, but I earned every dollar. Meanwhile, back in Connecticut, my parents were scrambling. I heard from my sister Mia a few weeks later. She'd found out I was safe through Valerie, who'd been careful to handle the legal side of things before contacting them. They filed a missing persons report, Mia said over the phone, whispering like she thought they could still hear her. They told the cops you ran away after being grounded. Of course they did. The police dropped the case as soon as the emancipation papers came through. Roger and Sharon were furious. They tried calling me from block numbers, even wrote letters. One was 4 pages of gaslighting, claiming they'd only meant to teach me resilience. Another one said they forgave me for making such a big deal out of nothing. Valerie kept them all in a folder in her closet, just in case we needed them someday. She called it Exhibit A. I didn't respond. Not once. For the next 2 years, I focused on rebuilding. I got my GED, then a certification in electrical work. Apprenticed with a guy named Rob who treated me more like a nephew than an employee. He taught me everything he knew, not because he had to, but because he believed in second chances. Slowly, I began to believe in them too. But even as I built something real, a life, a career, I never forgot where I came from. Not out of bitterness, out of clarity. I needed that scar to remind me what I'd escaped. Needed it to push me forward every time doubt crept in. The calls stopped eventually. The letters too. It was like they decided if they couldn't control me, they'd pretend I didn't exist. That was fine by me. By the time I was 23, I'd started my own electrical company. Small jobs at first, word-of-mouth work, then bigger contracts. I hired 2 guys from my GED class who reminded me of myself. We worked hard, stayed honest, and grew steadily. I didn't tell many people about my past. It felt like another life, someone else's nightmare. But it lived quietly in the corners of my mind, flaring up every now and then when a client raised their voice or when I heard someone say, "Tough love builds character." No, I wanted to say, love builds character. Tough doesn't have to mean cruel. And by 26, when I finally bought a modest 2-story home of my own, I stood on the porch, looked out at the yard I'd mowed myself, and thought, I made it, without them, despite them. But the story wasn't over, not even close. They say time heals all wounds, but time can't erase what never got closure, especially when ghosts from your past find your address. It had been almost 20 years since that gas station morning, and I had built a life brick by brick without ever hearing my parents' names aloud. So when my phone rang one Thursday morning with an unknown Connecticut number, I felt a chill before I even answered. I didn't pick up. Let it ring. Figured it was spam or some old classmate trying to reconnect. But then came the voicemails. 39 of them. At first, I ignored them all. I didn't even listen until Sabrina, my sister I hadn't spoken to in over a decade, left one of her own. Her voice cracked with urgency. "Ben, please, just call me. It's not them, it's me. Please." I sat in my truck outside the worksite, the voicemail playing in my ear, the weight of the past settling into my chest like wet concrete. I hadn't thought about Sabrina in years. Not really. She was only 8 when I left. Too young to know the whole truth, but old enough to grow up with the version Mom and Dad fed her. I texted her, short and to the point. "Denny's on 5th, 7 a.m. Come alone or don't come at all." She came. The moment she walked in, I saw it. How hard life had been on her too. Her hands trembled around her coffee cup, and she kept shredding napkins like she used to do at the dinner table as a kid. "They found you through your company website," she said. "They've been watching it for months." I sipped my coffee, stone-faced. "What do they want?" Sabrina looked down. "Money. They're losing the house. Dad's been gambling. Mom maxed out their cards. They need 50 grand. I let that hang in the air. "You know what they did to me," I said. "What they were like." "I know," she whispered. "But they're still our parents." "No, they stopped being mine when they drove away that day." She blinked hard. I could tell she wasn't expecting the wall I'd become, but I'd had 20 years to build it. She begged, not for herself, but for them. Told me Mom's health was failing, that Dad was drinking more than ever, that they'd blamed everyone but themselves, just like they always did. Still, she defended them in the way children do when they haven't fully let go of the dream that their parents will one day be what they always should have been. "I'm not your solution," I told her. "Let them fall." I stood up, paid for breakfast, and walked out. I didn't look back, but she followed me. "They're coming to your office," she shouted. "Tomorrow morning. They have the address." I paused, didn't flinch. "Good," I said. "Let them." That night, I made calls of my own, pulled files, talked to lawyers, talked to the bank. Turns out, their mortgage was with a financial institution I had done business with through a construction project last year. I had contacts, I had resources, and I had leverage. By morning, I'd bought the debt. Quietly, legally, clean and surgical. The same way I'd learned to handle pain, not with fire, but with precision. They wanted to see what kind of man I'd become. I was going to show them, not through revenge, through reality. Through every ounce of success they never believed I'd earn. Through the cold, professional dismantling of the illusion they'd spent 2 decades pretending was truth. Let them come. The door was open, but so was the trap. They walked into my office like they still owned the world, like time had paused 20 years ago, and I was still the 16-year-old they could control with threats and guilt. I saw them first through the glass wall. Gerald in that same ill-fitting brown suit he wore to church every Easter, and Denise with her overly dyed hair and lips trembling with what I guessed she thought looked like sorrow. But I didn't feel nervous. I felt ready. Jenny, my receptionist, called through the intercom. "Mr. Walker, your guests are here." "Send them in," I said, not missing a beat. They shuffled in like actors playing humble. Mom burst into tears the second she saw me. "Oh, my baby boy, look at you, all grown up." She lunged toward me, arms open, but I held up a hand and stepped back. "Let's keep this professional." Dad scowled. "Is that any way to talk to your mother after 20 years? I gestured toward the chairs in front of my desk. "Sit down. State your business." They exchanged glances, clearly thrown off balance. That wasn't how they expected this to go. "Good. You know why we're here." Dad started, puffing out his chest. "We've fallen on hard times, and I know all about the second mortgage," I cut in. "The missed payments, the gambling losses, Mom's maxed out cards." Denise gasped like I'd slapped her. "You've been spying on us?" "No, I've been preparing," I said, reaching into my desk and pulling out the file. "When you came sniffing around my company, I did what any responsible business owner would do. I looked into the threat, and then I bought your mortgage debt from the bank." The silence in that room could have shattered glass. Mom's jaw dropped. Dad's face turned red, then pale. "You? What does that even mean?" he stammered. "It means the house you're so desperate to save is now legally owned by my company. You have 30 days to vacate." Denise let out a wail. "You wouldn't... Ben, please, that's our home." I leaned back in my chair. "Like the gas station was my home when you left me there, at least I'm giving you a full month. You gave me 30 seconds. Dad stood up, fists clenched, his voice rising. "You think you're better than us? You think this fancy office makes you something? We made you. You owe us everything." I didn't flinch. "You made me? No. You left me. And I made myself." Security stepped in then, on cue. I'd prepped them the night before. They escorted my parents out while Mom shrieked about betrayal and Dad ranted about lawsuits he couldn't afford. I watched them through the glass as they were led away, my phone still recording the entire encounter. Moments later, it buzzed. A text from Sabrina. "They just called me crying. What did you do?" I typed back what they taught me to do. I looked out for myself. The truth is, I didn't do any of this out of spite. I did it because people like them only understand consequences. For years, they had everyone convinced I was the broken one, that I ran away because I was troubled or ungrateful. Now the truth was clear. They came looking for a son they abandoned, hoping for a payday, a guilt trip, maybe redemption. But what they found was a man who survived despite them, not because of them. And this man? He wasn't handing out second chances. He was handing out eviction notices. The morning of the demolition felt surreal. Not because I doubted the decision, I'd had 20 years to be sure, but because after everything, it was finally happening. The house I'd been raised in, the house that was more prison than home, was going down, and I would be there to watch every brick fall. I arrived early, coffee in hand, lawn chair slung over my shoulder, just like I said I would. A few construction guys from my company were already on site, prepping equipment. The bulldozers rumbled in the background, engines humming like some great beast about to wake. I gave them a nod and set up my chair across the street under a patch of shade. At 7:04 a.m., a black Toyota pulled up. I didn't need to look twice. Gerald and Denise. They stumbled out like ghosts, faces drawn, aging more in the past 2 months than in the last 20 years. Sabrina wasn't with them. She had texted the night before, "I can't watch this. I hope you find peace." My parents didn't say anything at first, just stared at me, then at the house. Mom clutched a wrinkled Kleenex like it could hold back time. Dad muttered something under his breath, probably a prayer or a curse. "You came," I said simply, not rising. Mom stepped forward. "Please, Ben, this is cruel." "No," I said calmly. "Cruel was leaving your 16-year-old son at a gas station in the middle of nowhere to teach him a lesson. This is closure." We said we were sorry. Dad snapped. "What more do you want from us?" "I don't want anything," I said. "That's the point. I don't need anything from you anymore. Not love, not approval, and definitely not forgiveness." Mom sobbed. "You could have helped. You could have saved us." I tilted my head. "I did help. I gave you 30 days. I didn't throw your things in the street. I let you walk out with dignity. That's more grace than you ever gave me." Behind us, the foreman raised his hand. I gave him a thumbs up. The machine roared to life. With a mechanical groan and a sudden burst of power, the bulldozer drove forward and punched through the front wall like it was made of paper. Glass shattered, wood splintered, dust rose like a storm. Mom screamed. Dad shouted something unintelligible. I took a sip of coffee. By 8:30, the roof was gone. By 9:00, all that remained was a pile of twisted metal and memories. I stood then, brushed the dust off my jeans, and walked toward the chain-link fence that separated me from the wreckage. "You built a house out of pain," I said quietly, not really to them. "Now I'm building something else." Denise looked up, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "What do you mean?" I pulled a folded paper from my back pocket and handed it over. "Annabelle Haven," she read. "20 affordable housing units for single parents and at-risk youth. Groundbreaking this fall." "Named after Aunt Annabelle," I said, "the only adult who ever showed me kindness when it actually mattered." Dad scoffed. "You think tearing down makes you better?" "No," I said, "but building something better in its place does." They didn't respond. They didn't have to. I turned and walked away as the last of the rubble was cleared. The echoes of that house, the shouting, the slammed doors, the bitter silences, died with it. And for the first time in 2 decades, I felt free. Not just from them, but from everything they tried to make me believe I was. That day, I didn't just watch a house fall. I watched a chapter close, and this time, I was the one holding the pen.